of Peace came bursting through the wind. The violent sky had spread, and in your light I found rest. Tearing through the night, riding on the storm, staring down the fight. My eyes found yours, shining like the sun, striding through my fear. The Prince of Peace met me there. You heard my prayer. Hope like the sun, light piercing through the dark. The Prince of Peace came and broke into my heart. The violent cross, the empty grave, and in your light I found grace. Tearing through the night, riding on the storm, staring down the fight. My eyes found yours, shining like the sun, striding through my fears. The Prince of Peace met me there. Your love surrounds me when my thoughts wage war. When I scream, stare at they, your voice will roar. Come death,
welcome back to the second Sunday live stream. Yet again, we're stoked to have you here, and we have some announcements for you.
Yeah, so the first announcement that we have is something that we've been keeping up with every single week, and that is Verge. Verge, if you don't know, it's a conversation series that we've had going on for a couple years now. And right now, of course, it's on Zoom, just during the COVID pandemic. But it's been a really great way to just keep up with our community and stay invested in important conversations. And so, this mic, use this mic. So for those of you who couldn't hear that last part, sorry, but our first announcement is just what we've had going on for the past couple years, and it's something called Verge. Verge is a conversation series, and right now we've been having it on Zoom just during the pandemic, and we're just going to continue doing that every Wednesday at 6:30. So if you'd like to continue to take part in important and intellectually stimulating conversations during this pandemic and just feel like you're a part of the community, what's cool is that it's sort of like opened our boundaries a little bit and made us see that we can be vulnerable through a screen. People are going to therapy on Zoom now, so you can be more vulnerable than you ever believed through a screen. And we can also invite people from Canada, from Colorado, from places across the country. And so it's been a really cool opening up of our community.
We've been trying to figure out how to do community during this quarantine season, and as the restrictions lighten, we've been starting these watch parties all over the city that you can join, where we come together as small little socially distanced groups and watch the second Sunday live stream together. We firmly believe that you can't become who you're created to be without community, and so as isolation and loneliness and hardship really reign king during this season, we want to have a group of people all over the city watch spiritually, joining this community and seeing the Second Sunday live stream together. So if you want more info on that, you can email info@secondsundaysd.com or hit us up on Instagram, and we'd love to give you info on that. I also have one more announcement for you. The bread drop is we've been doing that for a while, and this is super cool because Jeffrey has been making awesome bread for us, some of the best sourdough that San Diego has to offer, and we've been just wanting to bless the community as we're a part, and so we will deliver bread to you for free. We'll just show up at your door and give you hot, warm, fresh bread on, I believe, Thursday. So if you want bread, please, again, either email us or hit us up on Instagram, and we will come your way with bread and deliver it straight to you.
Yeah, so that's something super cool that's been going on during quarantine that just kind of came to us. And definitely hit up Isola Bakery if you haven't already. They're super awesome, and it's run by the same guy who owns 710, Jeffrey. And finally, we just want to encourage you guys. It's been a pretty traumatic week for every citizen of the U.S. and outside of the U.S. And in light of all of the oppression that's come to light, most recently, we have set up a page for resources on our most recent post, and we encourage you all, as being a human, you have a platform, and if you're white, then you have privilege. And so we just encourage you all to use that for good right now. So we've set up some resources right now. We're trying to head up to the vigil after service at 6:30 p.m. But there's also a ton of different ways linked to give or to sign petitions. And so if you have the resource, we encourage you to share the resource, because it is our human right to protect others' humans' rights. And so that's just what we believe as a church, and we invite you into that. And now we're going to invite you into a space of coffee social, but I just wanted to warn you guys that later on in service, we are going to be having a time of communion. So you can use this time to find some bread and some juice or wine or, I don't know, red-colored beverage, and set up for communion so that we can all take that together as a community later on in the service. And so we'll see you guys in just a couple minutes with Jay's message. Thank you so much for joining us live today.
Okay, Coffee Social peeps. We're going to cut Coffee Social short today because we do have a lot going on, and probably most of you already grabbed your wine and bread. We know. Feel it. Just blocks away from here, there's still protests going on. In fact, about 2 blocks away is a police station that had to disperse crowds earlier on today with tear gas. It's surreal what's happening across the nation. We find ourselves probably like you. I can't speak for you, but for my family and I, it's like the narrative shifted. It's like something really big and foundational is wanting to break through and wanting to break loose. And I think maybe you're like my family and I, that you're wondering, okay, so what do we do? What do we do from here? Like, what do you do when you're in a pandemic that threatens your health, and another sort of pandemic that threatens the fabric of society? What do you do? If you're anything like most of the people out there, you kind of just buffer. You don't do anything, and I can totally relate to that. But I think there's something more for us. And I was walking through my neighborhood. I happen to live in La Mesa, and La Mesa is unfortunately famous now, thanks to some guy who was walking around through our streets till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. last night, filming as protesters, a protest that early on in the day was peaceful, and I witnessed a lot of grace in that protest that evolved into something that was a gross representation of activism. And it was horrible to watch buildings and institutions burnt to the ground. But it was only symbolic of the burning and the brokenness that we as a culture, we as a people have been experiencing for so long. And so it's kind of like what's inside got worked outside. And it was hard to watch, in large part because it was saying something to us. Kind of like an ache or a pain in your body, it was saying something's wrong here. Something needs to be fixed. As I walked through my neighborhood this morning, and I walked by burning buildings. I walked by crowds of people trying to make sense of things. I walked by most of the shops on Main Street of La Mesa with their windows broken out. And I thought to myself, how quick it can change. I even asked myself this question: why did they have to do this? And then I caught myself, because I said they. Who's they? And I really think we as Christ followers, people who call Jesus our rabbi and call Jesus our Lord, call Jesus even something as amazing as Savior, we have an opportunity in this moment to notice the they in here. That in some way we are all culpable for the brokenness of an ecological system, of economic systems, of all kinds of systems. Systems that we gave power to instead of stewarding. Systems that we let grow over us rather than under us. Systems that we let the human craving for power and control to get out of control. They is you. They is me. One of the marks of fascism is that you must have a demon to destroy. But the Apostle Paul says something so revolutionary in Ephesians 6. This is so groundbreakingly huge. And for some of you who have been hanging out with Second Sunday and you don't traffic in Christian theology a ton, I'm about to get very Christian theological on you. But Paul says this. He says, your battle is not against flesh and blood. He says your battle is against powers, rulers, and authorities in heavenly realms. Y'all, I know how that sounds. I took a whole class on like metaphysics. I get metaphysics does not reckon well on the heart of a modern person, an enlightened person. But listen, here's what it does, and I need you to hear this. It decentralizes the person you see doing all the wrong. It decentralized the problem from them to something else, so they don't have to be your enemy. They no longer have to be the one that the battle is against. There is a battle against something else. And I couldn't begin to open up a whiteboard and explain it to you. It's mysterious. But I know that as I was walking through the throngs in a peaceful protest yesterday, praying that nothing like what happened last night would happen, I felt two things: palpable evil and palpable good. And the question on any given day is, what will you give yourself to? Will you give yourself to something that wants to destroy and dehumanize? Or will you give yourself to something that will see the person across from you and love? That's why I believe, as did the early church, that the most revolutionary thing we can do is communion. I know. Do you mean like the juice and the bread? Yes. God forbid it ever turned into the juice and the bread. Because here's what we see in communion, right? It's the breaking of the body. I was reading an article that Josh sent me earlier on today. It was an article written by the daughter of Abraham Heschel, a famous rabbi who was a good friend of MLK during the civil rights movement. And one of the photographers that covered a lot of the protests during the civil rights movement posed a really good question. How do you make the unseen seen? How do you make the unseen seen? Now, some of you think, because of my preface, that I'm talking about just the spiritual world. But actually, yeah, I'm talking about that too. But I'm also talking about, how do you see the hidden side of that person who just hucked a rock through a window and the struggles and the suffering they've been through their whole lives? How do you see the nuance to a statement that often goes unturned because we like to simplify? And our mediums simplify to a dumb level. How do we make the unseen world where peace and justice flows down like a mighty river and equity is the inheritance of all visible? How do we make it seen? How do you take the unseen and make it seen, which is an apropos question for a photographer, because what makes that picture so powerful is that you're seeing not just a face, you're seeing a soul, you're seeing a life, you're seeing a struggle. How will we ever see each other? I could show you pictures I took this morning of devastation. How do we not see that? See, this just blends in with all the other violence that's being proliferated out there. Violence as old as time. Y'all, let me say this, and maybe this is all you remember. Violence is passé. It's old school. It's not the new reality. The myth of redemptive violence only leads to a system of domination. It doesn't work. It's cyclical. Just ask everybody who's lived in all of time, forever and ever. It doesn't work. That's why Jesus stood in front of Pilate and did nothing. He could have called legions of angels. I believe that. Some of you are like, wait. Did he just say legions of angels? Yes, I did. I believe that. I believe in a spiritual realm, and I believe Jesus was tapped into it I think he was the Lord of it. And I think that in that moment, he was saying, violence doesn't work. In the end, there has to be a new way. If we're going to see a new reality ushered in, we have to somehow let go of that thing that we see every day, where we have to have the last word, where we have to destroy that person to build ourselves up. Violence, violence, violence. If you want to see the unseen, we have to get rid of violence, and that starts with communion. What is communion? Communion is presence. The bread has always signified the presence of Jesus. That's why he left it with his disciples. He said, hey guys, every time you hold this, and he did it in the context of the Passover meal. There's so much happening in that meal. And he's saying, listen, this is me, broken for you. See, the bread that signifies the presence of God also signifies one of the most powerful theological concepts of all. And it's found only in Jesus. Kenosis. Kenosis means emptying. And God emptied. He emptied himself. He emptied himself of his God rights, his God card. He emptied himself of everything that would stand between him and you. He emptied himself of power. Check. Okay. Hi, everybody. That was just an opportunity for you to go to the bathroom, so good to have you back. I want to read for you a quote by Martin Luther King. He said, every act of injustice mars and defaces the image of God in people. Let me say that again. Every act of injustice mars and defaces the image of God in people. See, because the work of injustice is the work of overlooking. The work of injustice is not seeing. The work of injustice is failing to understand who and what is standing before you. If we're going to make any steps in this situation we find ourselves, and I do believe we're going to, it's going to take seeing one another, and to see one another, we need to empty ourselves. We need to empty ourselves of power, of finished stories, and of bad mediums. What do I mean? I mean, for you to be truly human means that you see people, that you see the persons in your life. The power games must be put down for you to see them. Jesus emptying himself on the cross of his godness so beautifully congruent with the God of Isaiah 6, who, though he was a consuming fire, touched the prophet's lips with a burning coal and rid him of what separated him from a holy God. Jesus wanted to be with. He wanted to be seen and to see. He wanted to relate, because in God we have relationship. The essence of God is togetherness. The essence of God is to see, is to understand, is to come alongside. And so it makes sense that power, which can sometimes be the game that we corrupt, that causes us not to see the person across from us, because instead of seeing them, we commodify them. Instead of seeing them, we leverage them to do what we want to do, to accomplish ends that we have preconceived. This is the power game. We all play it. But for us to actually see one another, we have to put it aside. We're going to have to put aside the power games. You can see it in the micros of your life and the macros. You can see it in geopolitical realities, just like you can see it on the schoolyard between middle schoolers. We are all playing the power game, but it hurts the ability to see one another. And so when we're in these situations and we're tempted to grasp for power, may we not grasp for power. May we grasp for presence instead. And maybe that will hurt ego. Maybe that will subjugate your feelings in some ways. Maybe that will even make you feel like you're shrinking a little bit at first. But what will happen is you'll find that your soul, your heart, your life begins to expand, because people for whom you were created to commune are all of a sudden not just that guy, but brother. That girl, but sister, you know? It can go to beautiful places. But we don't have to just empty ourselves of this pursuit of power. We have to give over the bad stories that we are finishing. Jesus did not let the stories brought to him color how he treated people. He sat with prostitutes. He sat with outcasts. He sat with tax collectors who were the worst of the worst. They were traitors who got rich on it. He sat with them. He actually had meals with them, because he didn't take the narrative that was being handed down to him by society at the time. No, he would get to know them for himself. And if we're going to see any headway, you need to think of that person that you would least like to sit across the table from, that you would least like to hear the story of. And here's what Jesus, I believe, is inviting you to do: to eat with them for a long time, and to ask them questions, and to enter into the awkward silences, and to do that over and over and over again until we see each other, because the stories that we're finishing of one another are not helping anybody. And then we need to empty ourselves of bad mediums. We need to get better mediums. If the incarnation is true, the incarnation, God coming and becoming flesh to dwell amongst us, if that's true, and I believe it is, then God chose a medium that's the best practice. If God infleshed, and you have a really big conversation to have with a friend, don't do it over a text. Don't do it via social media. Part of the problem is that the medium defines the message, and we're stuffing huge messages into mediums that are robbing them of their meaning. And we're missing each other in the night. We have to start meeting in flesh. We have to start having hard conversations, not on posts, but at a place where you're in the flesh, sitting across from that person and really communing. We have to get rid of bad mediums. That doesn't mean that social media is bad. It just means it's not the medium that we process the level of unrest that we are processing right now. Lastly, the bread represents presence, and God is inviting us into presence. But the juice, the wine, represents the kind of presence. It's the kind of presence that pours itself out. It's the kind of presence that gets crushed and spills all that's inside. Y'all, you're like me. You come with a hard candy shell. And probably because you've experienced a cold, hard world the day you were born, you probably, like everybody else, said, "What the heck? Put me back in where it's warm and safe," because life's not warm. It's not safe. It's hard. People burn you. People betray. Family members who should be nurturing do these things. Our insides we guard. And we can't do that if we're going to make any headway. We have to get honest with each other. We have to get vulnerable with each other. We have to be willing to let others get vulnerable with us. Y'all, we suck at this. America on the Enneagram is a 3, and 3s need to achieve. You, as well as I, you need to achieve. Letting somebody see your broken self on the inside is the last thing you want to do. Some of you, you're down, but I would say probably the majority of you have this kind of like American thread inside of you that's like, the last thing I want to do is show that person my weakness. There will be no headway until we allow ourselves to be crushed. See, because that's passion. That's the passion. To allow yourself to be crushed. And note, a passion is carried out over a long period of time. It is not the sum total of showing up to a rally. It is many hours of sitting with someone who does not agree with your political persuasion, but that over time learns to know you, and you learn to know them. We must learn to know each other. We must learn to know how to circumvent the cheap, knockoff versions of friendship and community we are all too familiar with. We must learn to spill ourselves out for the sake of the other, to be vulnerable as a symbol and a tribute to the crucified Christ who was spilled out for you and for me. That was his passion. Sacrifice is what we're talking about. We're talking about not thinking that your life is your own. I'm about to say something really offensive to you as an American. I apologize ahead of time. Your life is not your own. Your life, and you'll learn this if you've had kids, is best when it is spent on others. Your life Here we go. This is going to be gnarly. Is best when it is spent on your enemies. Your life was meant to be spilled out as Christ's life was spilled out for you. We're going to sing a few songs right now, and we invite you, as we do that, to take communion with us. And as you do, may the Lord Jesus make himself real to you. May he show himself to be present, and may he show himself to be poured out for you for the forgiveness of sins. God, we seek you right now. We need you. We need your healing. Lead us to that through the realities of presence and sacrifice. Lead us to the realities of heaven that are beautifully summarized in this act of communion, where we not only get to be with each other, but where we become integrally dependent on one another. We need you, Jesus. We need you to meet us in this space right now.
I've been strong and I've been broken within a moment. I've been faithful and I've been reckless at every bend. I've held everything together and watched it shatter. I've stood tall and I have crumbled in the same breath. And I've wrestled and I've trembled towards surrender. Chased my heart adrift and drifted home again. Plundered blessing till I've been desperate to find redemption. And every time I turn around, Lord, you're still there. I was found before I was lost. I was yours before I was not. There's grace to spare for all my mistakes. That part just wrecks me.
Deserve this kind of love. Somehow this kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I could never add up to be somebody you still want. Somehow you love me as you find me.
Who am I to think your glory needs my praises? But if this borrowed breath is yours, Lord, take it all. You are faithful and you are gracious, and I'm just grateful to think you don't need a single thing, and still you want my heart. I was found before I was lost. I was yours before I was not. You wear the scars for all my mistakes, and that part just wrecks me.
don't deserve this kind of love. Somehow, this kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I could never add up to be somebody you still want. Somehow, you love me as you find me. 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 You love me as you find. Your love's too good to leave me. You love me as you find. Your love's too good to leave me. You love me as you find. Your love's too good to leave me. You love me as you find. Your love's too good to leave me. If you want my heart, I won't second guess. 'Cause I need your love more than anything. I'm in, I'm yours. Your love's too good to leave me. Your love's too good to leave me. If you want my heart, I won't second guess. 'Cause I need your love more than anything. I'm in, I'm yours. Your love's too good to leave me. Your love's too good to leave me. 'Cause I know I don't deserve this kind of love. Somehow, this kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I could never add up to be somebody you still want. Somehow, you love me as you find me.
Lord, how sweet did your gaze on my perilous side, to be found by the bitter end and carry the burden. For as grave in my failure, you prevailed in pure love, to be found in the depths of your heart, as good as forgiven. Oh, how you graced that cross where Jesus died and death took the loss. Wide as the floodgates of heaven, flung wide open within his scars. No, mine is the life you raised, yours the glory,
that took down that grave, bright as the sun, almighty in love. God, forever your kingdom come. Oh, how sweet is the sound of a heart drenched in grace, rising up from the ashes of praise, alive to your greatness. Hope as brazen as mercy through the perilous night. How you blaze through the darkness of fight, as bright as the morning. Oh, how you graced the cross where Jesus died and death took the loss. Wild as the floodgates of heaven, flung wide open within his guts. No, mine is the life you raise, yours the glory that took down that grave, bright as the sun, almighty in love. God, forever your kingdom come. My heart burns while the marches in all of your heart, in all that you are, let your praise run wild on my breath. I'll sing of your love, I'll sing it again till my heart burns wild on my chest. In all of your heart, in all that you are, let your praise run wild on my breath. In all of your heart, I'll sing it again. Oh, my heart burns wild on my chest. In all of your heart, in all that you are, till your praise runs wild on my breath. I'll sing of your love, I'll sing it again till my heart burns wild on my chest. I'll sing of your love in all of your heart till your praise is all I have left. I'll sing of your love again and again till my heart burns wild on my chest. I'll sing of your love in all of your heart till your praise is all I have left. I'll sing of your love again and again, how you graced the cross where Jesus died and death took the loss. Wide as the floodgates of heaven, flung wide open within his scars. No, mine is the life you raised, yours the glory that took down that grave, bright as the sun, almighty in love. God, forever your kingdom come. As the sun, let us see your kingdom come. Bright as the sun, have your way, your kingdom come. that breaks the constant night. You are the brilliance, the dream, evidence of things unseen. And even the darkest days are temporary. You are the everlasting light. In all of the time and space could not contain you. You are the everlasting light. You are the glory that stays. You never dim, you never fade. You are the power, the truth, and nothing can stop you, and nothing can stop you. 'Cause even the darkest days are temporary. You are the everlasting light. In all of the time and space could not contain you. You are the everlasting light. And even the darkest days are temporary. You are the everlasting light. All of the time and space could not contain you. You are the everlasting light. We speak this over our community. The end and the beginning, the new reality. Outside my understanding, yet still within my reach. As far as I can see you, you're closer still to me. You are the everlasting light. The end and the beginning, new reality. Outside my understanding is still within my reach. As far as I can see you, closer still to me. You are the everlasting light.
something real. And right now, God, we just ask that that reality would flood into each life that is watching right now and that will watch. We ask, God, that people who are experiencing despair today would exchange that despair for joy and hope. That those who are crippled with fear, Lord, would somehow, by your presence, be restored to what you intended for them, which is courage. May we all live in courage, God. I pray a dispensation, a letting loose from heaven of courage over this community, in Jesus' name. And I pray above all for love. For love is you. It's the culture of God himself. It's the culture of heaven. May we, God, as you modeled love through communion by being present and pouring yourself out, be a community and a people who are present to you and to each other and who pour ourselves out. Love you. We ask your grace and peace over our nation, over our friends. And God, we just ask that as we go from this place, Lord, you would begin a work that if we were to see the end right now, man, it would be hard to believe because it's just so good. That's your intention for every single person right now, and I pray right now, let them believe that. Your intentions are good and beautiful. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys. We are going to participate in the vigil. It's not a protest, it's a vigil. It's a candle. It's us standing in solidarity with George Floyd, his family, and those who have fallen because of injustices. And this is not a statement against. This is a statement for. And what we are making a statement for is very beautiful and true. That every human life is of inestimable value, and we will always stand behind it. In Jesus' name. So if you want to come with us, we'll be meeting in front of 710 at 6:15, or a little bit after that, and we'll be walking to the county building from there. God bless you guys. We love you, and we'll talk to you later.